Welcome to the State of the Union from Brussels. Over 5 years, the European Parliament shaped much of the legislation with a direct impact on the lives of 450 million Europeans. And I would even say that many millions from outside the EU, because the measures also affect political, economic and cultural relations with other countries. In the last plenary session before the European elections in June, there was a marathon of votes. No less than 89 legislative texts and 7 resolutions in 4 days. At the opening of the session, the Parliament's President summarized her assessment of the mandate.
We have listened, we have learnt, we have burst through the Brussels and Strasbourg bubbles to engage with and reach out to people across Member States. We have worked hard to ensure that this House is more efficient, more effective and fit for purpose. We have made it more open and more independent. We have negotiated and balanced budgets. We have ensured that this is a place of work that people feel proud and feel safe at. We have done all of this together.
However, this very last plenary session was marked by yet more allegations of foreign interference. I remind you that at the end of 2022, the so-called Qatar Gate broke out, with corruption allegations involving some MEPs and payments from the governments of Qatar and also Morocco and Mauritania. Following this, Russiagate emerged in March, the case in which parliamentarians are suspected of having received money from an entity with links to the Russian government to disseminate anti-European propaganda. And then this week, Chinagate broke out following police allegations that an advisor to a far-right German MEP from the AfD could be spying for China. One of the leaders of the Greens list for the elections issued a warning.
After Russiagate, now there are new suspicions of espionage for China, also from assistance from this Parliament. And it has become absolutely clear. These people on the far right, they are not patriots. They are not serving the interest of the European citizens, but the interest of dictatorships and autocracies. And this makes it even more important, colleagues, to build strong, pro-European, constructive majorities in the next European Parliament.
In this program, we recall what stood out most on the European political agenda of the week. But this time we will also anticipate an event from next week, referring to a moment in the past. I will explain. May 1st marks the 20th anniversary of the so-called Big Bang enlargement of the EU, where the bloc went from 15 to 25 member states. There will be many celebrations and debates about the impact of countries joining, especially from the east of the bloc. At the beginning of the week, I had the opportunity to reflect on the topic with a former Hungarian European Commissioner, who is now Secretary General of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, Laszlo Andor. In a somehow telegraphic way, how would you describe the most positive and the most negative impact of the big enlargement in 2004, both for the Union and for the newcomers at the time?
Well, 20 years is a short time in history, but I think we can already say that the overwhelming experience is very positive for the accession countries after joining the European Union. If you want to sum up in a nutshell what it means, it's stability and prosperity. Most of these countries, for most of the time, experienced very dynamic economic growth, which in the long run can lead to a sustainable convergence with the Western European countries.
And the less positive aspects?
Yes, this also came with some imbalances, right? So we talk about imbalances when capital flows, labor flows are not really balancing out each other. And it's quite clear that for most of the time, capital comes from west to east. And it results in a feeling that the locals are not entirely in charge of their own economy, because many decisions are taken by transnational companies or locations elsewhere in Europe or elsewhere in the world. At the same time, the labor flows are also very, very interesting, because the East Central European countries have lost a large part of their workforce. In many cases 5–6%.
So that's an important lesson. But what other reforms should the European Union do in order to accommodate more countries that want to be part of the Union?
Well, indeed, the future of cohesion policy is an absolutely important topic. and we need to draw lessons from the past experience and prepare these policies for the future at the same time. We can discuss the effectiveness of cohesion, to what extent the local players, the national players can really take advantage of these EU financial instruments. But in terms of the volume, there is also a need for reflection, because if more countries join in the next, let's say, 10 years, then the Western Balkans or Eastern Europe will require more resources.
How realistic it is that Ukraine, now at war, will one day become member of the European Union and other countries in that region?
It might be true that in 2013, the association, not a membership, but just an association, was already seen as controversial. But now Ukraine is an associated country. Together with Moldova, they are a candidate country. So this needs to be taken seriously. And the EU should help implementing further reforms, whether they are economic ones or other type.
Laszlo Andor, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Let's end the program with another small history lesson, in this case about Portugal. This member state of the Union has lived in democracy for 50 years, after overthrowing one of the longest fascist dictatorships in Europe. On April 25th, what became known as the Carnation Revolution is celebrated because a flower seller offered them to soldiers. In addition to the traditional military parades and political speech, the celebration is also marked by several cultural events. The military coup was practically violence-free, with the death of 4 civilians. The slogan that is still repeated today is "Long live freedom." This concludes our edition. Thank you for watching.